Thank you, Miriam. We tried to get Miriam live, but she's so busy with all her things going on in her life right now that trying to get her to join us live was going to be too much for right now for her. But I'm still holding out hope. We'll get her on the program. We'll get her on the program one of these mornings. She expressed interest in doing it, just not time. So good morning, everyone. This is our adult Bible study. Interesting.
Can you hear me, Scott?
I hear someone.
It's Heidi.
Oh, hi.
Yes.
Yes, we hear you. So let me get up the on the screen. We'll get our program for today. And get organized for what we're doing. So you should see the our program up on the screen, and here are our goals for today. I'll let you have a chance to read that while I do something in the background that I need to be prepared for the next item here. I'm going to go ahead and mute people because I'm getting a lot of noise. Then if you want to talk, you just have to unmute yourself.
Okay.
So we're going to basically try to cover all of the four topics for part 4 today. Hopefully we'll be able to do that. As usual, I have 2 hours of material to squeeze into a little less than an hour. So we'll do the best we can. Okay, if you have your Bible handy, open up Luke 12:22-31. And they suggested we read it. It's a long passage, but most people should remember this one. It's the one where Jesus is telling his disciples and others, do not worry about your life. Consider the lilies in the field, how they grow. And the ending is instead strive for his kingdom, and these things will be given to you as well. So it's a very familiar passage, at least was to me, and I'm sure most of you have seen it as well and read it. If you haven't, I do suggest you read it. It's very good. It fits right in perfect with obviously with the topic that we're studying. And we'll open with our opening prayer, and you're welcome to join me if you wish. God of every age, you know that the more things change, the more things stay the same. Help us to face our fears with faith and to see in our time together the ways you are calling us to trust in you. We do not want to hold these worries. We want to be held in your hand. Amen. And that probably should say hands instead of hand, don't you think? Let me see whether I typed it wrong. No, it says hand. I like hands though, don't you? Let's change it to hands. So we should be ready to start the video. And as we did last week, I think that worked better by knowing the questions ahead of time. So here are the questions we'll discuss after after we watch the video. And I'll read them very quickly just in case you're not seeing it on the screen for some reason. How does our relationship with technology affect our thinking about the future? How did Ginger experience a change in her thinking about financial insecurity? Why did Jerry Steed feel that communication was critical in helping his workers face uncertainty? Why does Jerry Steed feel that facts are our friends? How do facts influence our activities? And then the catch-all for everybody is, what other takeaways do you have from the video? What else did you get out of it that you want to talk about? So with that, we'll get the video going. I hope I'm going to get the video going. Just give me a moment. And I'll get the right screen up. It's hard to talk and run the computer at the same time, you know. There we go.
Well, we're glad to be back with you again today for this conversation as we continue to talk about being afraid and how we can live unafraid with courage and hope in very uncertain times. So as we're thinking about that, today in this session, we're going to talk about apocalyptic thinking. So the idea that the world is coming to an end, and there's a sort of Christian version of that, and then there's the version we entertain ourselves with blockbuster summer hits, and then there's the version that we look at in the world around us and just think everything's going to hell, and how are we going to survive this? And then we're going to talk about the fear of change, and this is a very real fear that we experience in our lives. We'll talk about the fear of missing out, or we might get to that, and we'll talk about some of our financial fears. And so that's where we're heading in this session, and I want to just jump in, and I want to begin by mentioning something I mentioned over and over again in the book. There's an acronym we talked about for fear that has to do with the the things aren't real, but then one of the approaches that I try to mention again and again in the book for dealing with fear is fear is facing your fears with faith, and that faith is not just our faith in God, but it's choosing what assumptions we believe. Right? I think about it in Hebrews 11:1. It says this, a very famous passage most people have memorized, but in the Common English Bible, faith is the reality of what we hope for, the proof of what we don't see. And so we're believing in things that we don't see, and we can either believe in things we don't see in a positive way, or we can believe the worst possible assumptions about things and find ourselves deeply depressed or really afraid. So face your fears with faith, examine your assumption in the light of the facts, attack your anxieties with action. And so often if we just rest in our fear and we don't do anything about it, we find it just continues to, it ruminates. We ruminate with it, and then releasing your cares to God. And so I want that to be sort of the backdrop as we talk about these fears. And when we think about apocalypse, I came to faith in Christ in a tradition where we heard almost every Sunday about the second coming of Christ, or the Antichrist was already here and present and alive. Did either of you grow up in settings where that was emphasized a lot?
Yes, it's constantly the apocalyptic rhetoric in just language is very present in the community, and I even see it in my community, in the congregation that I serve today, that they are every time that there is an occurrence like we experienced with the eclipse, I would see just people that were worried because there's something that is out of the norm, and it will bring up a lot of that language about this is the end of times, this is something that is coming up, and I feel like it just puts people on over the edge of the unknown, and it's just difficult time to pastor someone who is in that state of mind.
Right. It's interesting. All those promises in the Bible about the second coming of Christ were meant to instill hope. Of course, they were meant to tell you to be prepared anytime, for the moment when you might die or you would meet Christ face to face, that the Lord is coming back. But they were always meant to instill hope. But instead, so often today, they're instruments of fear. I want to move beyond that to the fear of change. We were having a conversation in my small group. All the folks are my age or older. about how, gosh, we're afraid of our grandchildren being born into this world. And I think, I wonder if our grandparents were afraid of us being born into this world. And you think about the change that happened with technology, Ginger, what do you think about the fear of change?
To go with your point on, as a parent of children entering middle school, we moms get together and we talk about, so what is social media doing to our children? And, it's the Elvis of today, maybe, of like, this is going to ruin them. This is going to take them down. This is, everything they do is documented and then used against them. And, so it's hard to be a parent, not just changing things in chapters of life, watching your children, but seeing the things that can go wrong and the factors out of our control and what it means to be a normal kid today. It looks like there's a lot of threats. And so I think that that's really where faith comes in of, God protect them, God help them make good decisions, help me mother, help me know what to say and what to do and when to intervene and when not to intervene. And but yeah, I live in fear of change for my kids.
Yeah.
One of the things with change that I see is within the congregation, there's 4 generations worshiping together. And so, and each generation has their own experience with technology. So how do we merge those different aspects so that we have a meaningful worship for everyone?
That is key. So I think part of what you mentioned is this fear of change, Carlos, leaves us unsettled inside. And sometimes when we're unsettled, then we begin to, our response to it is to react and to look at whatever the changes are and to just totally reject them out of hand. And I remember speaking with a man who was in his 70s when the internet was really coming on board. And he was really upset about the idea that, you would have an email address and people could find you on the internet. And he said, I'm not going to have a computer. I am not going to have anything to do with this technology. And that was a reaction that we often have to that kind of change. So that kind of fear of change, coupled with the fear of the other, often leads us, even as people of faith, to turn away from things that God is calling us to do because of our fears. It seems like that's a common occurrence. I want to talk about and wrap it up with the fear of finance. And I'm wondering, Ginger, how have you experienced or have you ever experienced an insecurity about finances, a concern about finances, fear of finances? What does that look like?
Tied to my calling, actually. So I felt a calling to go to seminary. I wasn't sure what God would have me do with it, but I felt like I needed to make that change and explore it. I was never going to reach the earnings that I had in the business world. But I remember journaling about it one night and praying. And the way that my lines of journaling worked out, I had the word scared, and then I think this is sacred work, and the scared and the sacred lined up. And if you flip the letters, scared and sacred are just the C and the A reverse. And I felt like looking at that journal page, I was like, this is sacred work and I'm scared, but maybe my scared is an indication that it's sacred and that I'm supposed to do that. And that journal page really became a moment of, I felt God speaking to me of, just flip the way you're looking at this and you're going to be okay. We wake up in the morning saying, if I'm so successful, why am I so unhappy? And that's how I felt in my business career. Now I feel like I have a sense of meaning. I don't have as much money, but I wake up excited about what God will do with me today.
That's awesome. Well, that's a great conversation we've had today. And I'm anxious for the folks who are watching this to have your own conversation today about these things. Thank you so much for sharing with us today. I have with me today Jerry Stead. He is a remarkable leader. He's been CEO of many companies, CEO of NCR, Legion Corporation, Ingram Micro, IHS, and now most recently IHS Market, one of the leading information providers in the world. And I've had a chance to know Jerry for some time, and I've just appreciated and respected his leadership so much. And Jerry, today we're talking about fear and the role that fear plays, in particular in the areas of finances, in the areas of leadership, and how fear changes the game when it comes to what's going on in our world around us. And I'd love to just ask you a few questions about this. I wonder, could you say a word about the role first that fear plays when it comes to the markets? Let's talk about that first.
Yeah, uncertainty creates fear, Adam. And a good example is when a company misses an estimate, that creates uncertainty, which creates great fear. I will say we're in a remarkable time right now, because in my view, in all the years I've led companies, there's more global uncertainty than I've ever seen, and yet the markets are I was going to say tending. They're not tending. They're actually ignoring a lot of it.
Interesting. So let's talk about as a CEO of a company and how fear, where do you see fear at work among employees? How do you manage to fear?
Well, that's a great question. I believe the really great leaders over communicate. I try to all the time about change, because the thing that creates the most fear for any person, any team, or any organization, again, is uncertainty. So for example, when we announced the merger of IHS Markit, very big deal, both teams with over 15,000 people around the world, I got deluged, as I expected, with questions. So what's going to happen here? What's going to happen there? Three things. One, they knew me well because I've led the company for the last 17 years, and I've always been open, honest, candid, caring with my communication. Two, I get out and touch as many of the people as I can. This year I've traveled 405,000 miles around the world to be with our customers and our people so they can ask anything they want to ask, and that's so critical. And then three is you lay out goals, which we did. We announced, actually, in our case, the day of the merger, what we're going to do financially, how quickly we would make the changes that impacted our people, and what we would do with building new infrastructure, then reported on that and still do weekly. Those are the three things I've always used. But it starts with trust. You know, I operate with 100% trust of all my people. I try to make sure I earn their trust, because when that happens, that reduces fear when you tell them what's going to happen, communicate what's going to happen, and then measure what's going to happen.
Let me ask you, Jerry, as CEO, you carry a lot of responsibility. Are there times that you've been afraid personally or as a leader, and how do you deal with that?
Yeah, it's also an excellent question. I get up, as you may remember, Adam, pretty early, about 3 o'clock every day. The first thing I do is exercise. Second thing I do is meditate. One of the things I do every day is read, even though I haven't memorized upside down and backwards, is read actually Norman Vincent Peale saying, I believe, I believe, I believe. I believe that God will do his very best if I listen and learn. So I do that every day. So that gets me started because I have fears too, obviously. What I've learned over the years is that faith conquers fear 100% of the time.
Absolutely, that's great. So I want to end by mentioning something I include in the book, and that is your statement, which I've always appreciated, facts are our friends. Would you say a little bit about that?
Yeah, because I've used that a lot. As you can imagine, recently too, one of the new projects I've taken on is a business that is actually the leader in agriculture information in the world. I'm doing that as a give back to the world going forward after I retire here at the end of the year from IHS Markit. And when I got there, what they had been taught was give an answer, figure out later if it's right. And so I use facts as our friends on everything. Facts will give us what we need to do to be successful. Facts will help us think through what we need to do. And if we're fact-based on one side, then open, honest, candid, caring communication on the other, we'll succeed in everything. And I use that all the time, Adam.
That's excellent. One of the things that strikes me about you, Jerry, is that as I know you, it's never about how much money you can have and you can make, but instead you've looked at how do I use money to make a difference in the world. Would you say a little bit more about that?
As you know, we invest. We don't just give. We invest in things that we believe, Mary Jo and I believe, will make a huge difference to the world. And we stayed very focused on that. As you may remember, we went through college got married after our freshman year, went through college on $2,900 a year, lived great, by the way. But we said if we ever had a chance, we'd give everything away to make a difference to the world. And the joy of giving is the most wonderful thing there is. One example only, I started, as you may remember, 12 and a half years ago, the research center for Alzheimer's Research Institute in Phoenix. Today, we're running a $500 million study on two vaccines in the United States, the UK, and Canada that will change the world if we make it happen. And we were able to invest and make that happen. I also had the honor of speaking to the 5,500 top Alzheimer's researchers in the world, asking them to do me a favor and spend all their time and energy going forward on partnering with each other to get rid of this. And so that's been the kind of thing we always do. It's because we made a decision to invest.
That's terrific, Jerry. Jerry, thank you so much for joining me today and for being a part of this study. I really appreciate it. I admire you, I respect you, and I'm really grateful for the way that you have lived your life unafraid with courage and hope. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
I don't know if you heard what I heard, but here's what I heard. I heard that Jerry faced his fears with faith. I heard that he examined the assumptions in the light of the facts. I heard that he was regularly attacking his anxieties with action. And that in the end, he released his fears to God. And that worked for Jerry, and I think it can work for you. Let's live as people who are unafraid with courage and hope.
Wow, that was great. You're welcome to unmute yourself to talk. We'll go through our questions. How does our relationship with technology affect our thinking about the future? Don't all speak at once.
I think AI is probably one of the biggest hopes that we have to try and conquer all of the climate change and all of the problems that we have, because we can use the technology to try and fix so many of the problems that we have, including having adequate housing and
you went off. There you go. Thank you. You cut out the last part of your comments. You're cutting off, Woody.
okay, pollution. I think AI is one of the ways that we can look forward to the future rather than being so terrified about it, because I think it has the potential to be a game changer in terms of how we solve problems and our ability to solve problems.
At the same time, don't we always get a lot of fear with between our TV and our movies and that kind of stuff about AI gone wild? So I think, personally, as a technology person, I think AI is great, but our fear mongers use AI to instill fear in people too. So we got to make sure that we recognize and have facts, as Jerry Steve just said. Anybody else want to say anything about technology? I mean, personally, from my standpoint, think about how much technology has changed in my lifetime. I can remember going to college and using my slide rule to do my calculations, and if I had a calculator, it was one of those big old mechanical calculators that were bigger than a typewriter. That was how I went to college. And then right at the end, we had computers, but but those were the big mainframes. Right at the end, we had Wang demonstrate a portable computer. It was three suitcases. That was the portable computer. And with only a few years, within 5 years, Texas Instruments and others, HP, had out the handheld computers that did calculators that did all the stuff the slide rule would do. So technology's changed so much in my lifetime, and I'm sure in all yours have the similar experiences. But for an engineer, it certainly has been it's been hard to keep up with the technology.
I still think it's more harmful than good for our children. Social media.
Well, and that brings up another question and comment that we had, which was what is the impact of social media? And we're gonna talk about that in a minute. I think I've got a slide coming up on that. Let's finish up on the video, and then we'll talk about the social media, Jen. So Ginger talked about financial insecurity. What did she get out of that? What was her catchwords that she was using?
Sacred versus scared.
Right.
I love
Change the order of 2 letters, and you changed being scared into being something that's sacred. So I thought that was a really interesting the way to think about that. Jerry Steed talked about communications being critical. Did anybody catch his 3 or 4 points he was making? Open, honest communications, kindness, and caring. I noticed he did a lot of in-person discussions, and facts were our friends. He said the key thing was earning trust and setting goals, and then reporting on the goals and the status of the goals weekly, and keeping open communications with all your employees. Anybody
Scott,
else pick up? Yeah. Yes.
I had a couple of thoughts, both in terms of the financial, well, first of all, about the financial things that Ginger talked about, and also that Jerry Stead talked about. These were all fairly high-level finance things by people who have plenty of resources. There was no real mention at all about the thousands, well, hundreds of thousands in this country and millions of people around the world, that financial security means, will I have a roof over my head, and will I still have it going into next month or next year? Will I have food for my family? And so there's financial insecurity at a variety of levels, but my concern is that people that look at the high level don't really appreciate what most people in this world are going through day by day in terms of financial insecurity. The other thing that struck me, I agree with him that facts are our friends, but we're living in a society today where everybody has their own set of facts, and everybody's facts are equal to everybody else's. So nobody knows what to believe.
Yeah, we've talked about that. I don't know whether you guys were on the call, Barb. I think it was a week ago, 2 weeks ago, where we talked about the media and the headlines and all that. I think you missed that one. I wanted to ask you while we have you. You mentioned 2 newspapers that were available online that had give you different inputs. So could you send those to me, and I'll send them out to the group, or send them to the group, however you want to do it. But send me some links.
Yeah, I can send it to you. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'll send it out, because that was something I wanted to do but didn't get a chance. The other thing, yes, somebody else had something?
Yeah, I was going to say that what I got out of some of the conversation was you take what you have and you use it to the best of your ability, no matter what level. But, it's hard work to acknowledge your ability and to tap into it. And it's like you have to do your homework before you get into a conversation. Try not to take things out of context. But everything is up to your ability. So some people have more ability to do things than others, and some don't. So no matter what your level is, you have to stay in the game in order to make your world right.
Yeah, and I've got some examples of that coming up too. Thanks, Kim. Anything else on the video? Because I want to move along so we get a chance to cover a few more. You see this list over here on the left-hand side. This is all the slides that I have to cover, and we're only on the, not counting the title page, the 4th slide. So we have a lot more that we want to talk about. So let's talk a little bit more about the apocalyptic and Dystonian visions. Anybody name any disaster movies that they particularly liked that talked about end of the world scenarios? Well, the one that I remember from years ago was Apocalypse Now. And I think it seems to me it was about the Vietnam War. Anybody?
I like the Planet of the Apes where nature kind of ends up winning a lot.
Yeah, there was just a clip on that with Charlton Heston actually in the Statue of Liberty. I was watching a PBS special on Statue of Liberty, and near the end of the special, they had a picture of the Statue of Liberty half buried in the sand.
Yeah, that was a monumental statement there.
Planet of the Apes.
Planet of the Apes, right? And then how about the there's always a movie out about some asteroid that's going to collide with the Earth, right? There's at least half a dozen of those that I can think of, current day, let alone old ones.
And the Terminator series.
Right. So why do you think people are so fascinated with disaster movies? Is it because people are worried about the disasters really occurring, or is it just a diversion because we can look at somebody else's potential disasters that are a lot worse than ours, or both?
There's always a potential storyline to every plus or minus situation we have, and I think it makes fun or makes you think about the negative points that could happen.
All right. Anybody else? Somebody started to talk, and then Kim took over the conversation.
I was going to say that I purposely don't watch any of those kinds of movies because I don't want to be upset by them.
Yeah, Susan, after reading your book, we really appreciate you being able to do that and sharing your story with us. If you haven't read Susan's book, I'll send out the information about it because it is a very good read. I've not finished it yet. I'm only on chapter 6, I think, but Pat has finished it. So now it's my turn to get to read it. Yeah, I think what I don't watch horror movies because I just don't care to see the. If I'm going to see blood and gore, I want to see it in a medical setting, not in a horror movie setting. Somebody's got some background noise going.
I don't know what that noise is, Scott, because I hear it too. Can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you, but I think it was Linda. I just muted her.
Okay. Well, I wanted to add what Susan said because I feel like Susan. I don't watch any of those kind of movies because I get scared. So I would watch a comedy. I remember the movie The Russians Are Coming. I remember that movie way back when. And I just don't want to get, I don't want to hear some of the things because I never know what's facts and fiction. So I stay away from it.
Yeah, I try not to watch some of the nuclear movies because they're so wrong. If any movie about a nuclear power plant, believe me, it'll be wrong. I haven't seen a single movie yet that's correct with anything about nuclear technology, even weapons. And we were just watching a clip from Dr. Strangelove the other day. Or how to make friends with a bomb, or what I think it was called, or something. Doomsday scenarios. I mean, I don't mind reading those books because I can read them and then laugh at some of the stuff as opposed to get worried about it. But anyway, any other thoughts on our fascination with the end of the world? If not, we'll move on. We've got a lot of other topics to talk about. So Adam suggested we think again about our acronym for fear. Face your facts with faith. Examine your assumptions in light of the facts. Attack your anxieties with action and release your cares to God. new joys on the other side in chapter 14, John 5, 2 through 9.
Scott,
Yep.
when I read that in his book, I had never really thought about the man at the pool being afraid to go in the water because of what his changed life might look like afterwards. And to me, that was a new insight.
You're right, and it was a different perspective. We just thought it was because nobody wanted to pay attention to somebody who has been laying by the pool, and to think that he might have not wanted anybody to help him. However, when Jesus came to help him, he did stand upright and walk, and all it took was having the faith to do that.
I think when you're ill, you become so used to having the illness as part of your identity that giving that up would be such a monumental change. You wonder what it would be like.
Right, but and as Susan, I'm sure could spend hours telling us, having faith and having hope and knowing you're going to recover is a big difference and can change your life. Obviously, her life was changed in an instant, but continuing on, we've all either known somebody. Now we all know Susan, but we all have known somebody else who's had an illness. Many of who have recovered, and many who haven't. So I think we just have to have faith. Anybody else want to have a thought on if Jesus were talking to you about going beyond fear that is distressing you, what do you think he would say to you?
Give your fears to me and let me handle it.
Okay, anybody else have a thought? What did you think about Adam's comment about his daughter going away to college? I thought the headline of that section was very good. It's something, I don't have it in front of me, but something to the effect of, I'm not dying, Dad. I'm just going to Kansas State. We've all been, many of us have been through that with our, children or seeing it with our grandchildren. And I can still remember taking the first daughter to college, and my wife at the time crying the whole way home, and it was a long trip. And then I remember taking the twins to college, and the joy we felt when we dropped them off. Of course, part of that was they were in the dorm at Radford. They were on the, I don't know, whatever it was, the 14th floor, some high up dorm, and the one elevator was broken, and they had all this stuff to move up, including the bunk beds that we had bought for them and to outfit their room and all this stuff. Some enterprising students were there helping us, helping people obviously for some remuneration. Carry things up those 14 flights. There was no way I was going to carry. I think I made the trip one time, but I was not about to carry up loads and loads of stuff many times. So anyway, I think that was part of the joy of leaving them. Anybody else have something they would like to share?
Well, I think too, Scott, we have to have faith in our kids sometimes too, because we can't do anything about living their lives if they're away from us in a different environment. So I try and just give them, just say, I have faith in you. And that's about all we can do sometimes also.
Okay, thanks, Barbara, for sending your material. It just came through. So I know that some parents have a better relationship with their kids. I know one parent that talks to her child sometimes for hours at a time. And I know another parent who, if he's lucky, if he hears from his kids 3 or 4 times a year. So
Wow.
it's interesting how relationships work. So the next topic is chapter 15, the perfect anxiety-producing machine. Anybody remember what FOMO stands for?
Fear of missing out.
How many of you have the fear of missing out? Nobody else?
Yes, I do.
You know, when I was reading it, I was thinking that that's what my daughter, I think that was one of the reasons it was so hard to put her down for naps, because she just didn't want to miss anything.
So, and I think my raising my hand anyway, personally, has to do more with my life as opposed to currently. But the social media is anxiety producing. And Jen, you had a comment you wanted to make. Here's your slide to do that on.
Well, I have to confess that we do not do social media. I'm sorry. I don't do Facebook. I don't do Twitter. I don't do Instagram. To me, it's more a problem than it is a help. And I keep in touch with my children and grandchildren and friends in other ways that are more helpful and more meaningful to me.
And they sometimes people, I still would put in the category email, particularly group emails, because that's another form of social media where you're sending out broadcast messages to a group of people. It's another way of communicating, and you get responses. So I have organizations that including the church where I'm sending out bulk email to people. And every now and again, you'll get somebody coming back on an email with, and sending to everybody else, misinterpreting what you've said, and coming back to that wrong what you. Then you have to go through a whole series of messages to try to explain what you meant by that statement. I usually do two rounds. If it takes more than 2 rounds of emails, I call the person. Because that's the only way to really communicate. Linda, did you have something you wanted to say? I noticed you got the feedback, but thank you for.
Laura's place, there is feedback. Huh. I just want to say that, never mind.
Okay.
Right later.
I bet you have 2 different things open. You may have a phone and you have 2 different things signed in, because you're getting feedback somehow or other. Okay, why does Adam feel that social media is an anxiety producing machine?
You read about the bullying of kids.
Okay, anything else?
And the suicides. Haven't there been kids who killed themselves from something that's happened or come from social media?
Let's see if you can hear me now.
Yes.
Can you?
That's better.
Hello, Scott?
Yes, that's better.
Can you hear me?
I hear someone.
Oh. Can you hear me now?
Yes, we hear you now.
I don't know, you may be on a different subject now, but I just want to say, so many of my friends take naps in the afternoon, but I go make another pot of coffee so that I won't miss anything.
Okay, thank you. So what are the two ways, in what two ways does Adam offer for addressing fear of missing out with regard to social media?
Hmm.
Okay, if you look on page 154, he talks about the friends who spent the day bickering, and then so one way of addressing FOMO in your life is to remember that what you see on social media posts isn't reality, but a small slice of life someone wants to allow others to share. So getting a message, unless somebody's sharing their whole life, like some of these reality TV things where they put the camera on the house, and even that there's stuff that goes on that you don't see, obviously. So recognize that what people are posting is what people want you to know about. And the second way is to take a break from social media, or at least ratchet down your use. So my question to you is, what do you share on social media? And that can be rhetorical. You don't have to answer. But think about what you're sharing. If you're sharing anything, and I would include group emails into that as far as the group is more than one. So if you're sending a message to more than one person, you're not communicating just with that one person. Now, I do it all the time personally because it's a good way to get information out to people that you want to have, but at the same time, it's really not communicating. I'm glad to see Barbara and David actually in the same room together instead of on two different computers. That's great.
Yeah. Hey, that's what Laura and I were doing this morning. Is I said, Laura, I really want to share this video that I got off social media. I would like your opinion and feedback on it because it seems like it's factual. It seems like it's true, and so we bounced it back and forth, paused it and everything. I think that's one of the problems is when we're sitting there alone looking at this stuff and not having that immediate feedback.
Good thoughts. And David, I just want to mention to you, you and I are both signed on using the BCUMC login. So we need to be careful about that because when you log in BCUMC, sometimes it'll cut me out. You're muted. We don't hear you.
It was unintentional. I used it Wednesday, and now when I come on, that's what my computer thinks I am. I didn't notice it until probably 15, 20 minutes in. That
I'm glad it didn't cut me out completely because it would have cut out the whole video we were running. So anyway, yeah, and I've been logging in with that because that does give me all the access to all the other features that I need. For running. So, okay, thank you. Again, we're not going to discuss it, but think about what makes a good post and why, and what does not make a good post and why that is. When you're getting ready to post something, if you have someone you could share it with before you post it, particularly if you think it could be possibly controversial or misunderstood, it always helps to have a second person read it before you post it to, or send a message out to a bigger group. And that particularly goes for emails. Okay, the last topic, and we've got 10 minutes, is I could buy me a boat. So I did not know that song, so I did look it up. I won't play it, but because I don't particularly care for some of the language in it, but it's listed here. If you want to see it, just go to YouTube and Google or search for I could buy me a boat and it'll come right up. And if you don't mind the swearing in it, some of the key parts of it was money can't buy happiness, but it could buy me a boat. It could buy me a truck to pull it. It could even buy me a Yeti 110. And it was by Chris Jansen, who again I know a lot of the country music people, but I didn't know him. But I did like the couple quotes that started the chapter with. So if does anybody know why dogs do not have money?
They don't have pockets.
I thought that was great. That's a Jerry Seinfeld. And then of course right with that was our Luke 12 verses that went with that. So they suggested actually skipping the one about a raven. Why does a raven not sow or reap?
God provides.
God provides, right. So at the end of this section, on page 168, I've reproduced the Adam's 5 basic principles that can help to help us with a lifestyle that's simpler, more disciplined, and more focused on generosity. So some of these may be for many of us, this may be a little information a little too late, although it's never too late. But some of these things, it sure would have been good 60 years ago when I was 14, if someone had actually sat me down and had talked about this with me. You know, of course, back then I didn't have a credit card, I didn't have a debit card, I didn't have a checkbook. So, and I knew that if I wrote more money off of a checkbook, that I didn't have money in the account. But I also had a paper route, and I was able to have some income coming in, and I didn't have to rely on my parents for allowance. But it sure would have been nice to have someone really kick some sense in my head on this, because I sure didn't follow a lot of this in my early years. And I'm not sure whether my early years are ever over yet.
And you could have been buying Berkshire Hathaway for $25 a share.
Exactly, or anything else, you know. I got turned off personally. I got turned off on the stock market when my dad took the money that he had said he had invested for me and sold my stock without telling me, and bought something else that immediately lost all its value. So a little bit of my early experiences with the stock market was stay away. Be careful. You're going to lose your money. I don't know about your parents, or fathers, but mine went on whims. So he did for a long time carry his Bible around with him everywhere he went, and would read to us out of it. And you know, next thing he carried around was his portfolio with his clipboard and all his stuff, because he took some class on how to invest your money in stocks. So like I said, he probably lost mine. So my teenage years were very interesting at home, and Pat can attest to that. So anyway, principles: develop and use a budget. We do that for our church. We do that. I do that for all my other organizations. Somehow I don't manage to do that for myself. And excuse me, I've got to stand up because I just got a cramp. Avoid debt. Use it only for your house, car, and education if you must. I actually have a father-in-law who bought his cars with cash. Right?
Yes.
And his houses he bought with cash. So someone knew how not to get in debt. And that the only problem was when you want to go get a credit card for some reason, you can't get one because you have no credit. So there are good reasons to have a credit card. Live at least 2 steps below your means. And I added a parenthetical note, not 2 steps above it. Set a goal of giving away 10% or more of your income. This is something we've, the church teaches, we've talked about. If you aren't there yet, you should make that a goal. And then as Adam says, when he got to 10%, he figured out how to do more. And I thought Jerry Steed was wonderful talking about investing, using your money to invest in a future or something as opposed to just giving away money. And so think about the donations we made to the Indian Water Project.
Mhm.
The idea was not to give them bottles of water. The idea was to give them wells. Same thing for the Church of the Resurrection's water projects they're doing in Africa and other places. Give them the ability to do something, not just, you got to give them water to drink, but at the same time you got to give them the ability to get water. There was a thing on TV today about West Virginia and a coal mine town that doesn't have clean water. And the state's not forthcoming as far as trying to take care of their water problems. So there's plenty of places that need our help and our investment. Okay, starting in a couple of weeks, we're gonna move to Moses, or go back in time to Moses, and somebody's talking, has got talking going on in the background. So if I know Jen got a few books and she was going to send it to a couple people. I don't know that she's talked to any of you, but if anybody needs help getting a book, please let Jen or me know. Otherwise, we're assuming you're going to get your own book. There are 6 chapters. One of the things I was doing this morning was downloading the information. Downloading the information off of Adam's website, and I'll start sharing that information as well. If for some reason you don't want to get a book, that's okay. If you want to go to his sermon series, I'll provide that information. You can get the information off his sermon series. You don't have to have a book if you'd rather watch the videos from his sermon series, or both. I want to end with a thought on practice of cultivating gratitude, chapter 15. If you read 1 Thessalonians 5:16, rejoice always. And there's a whole long series of when something happens in your life, we give thanks to you, O Lord. So I won't do that. It would take a few more minutes. But just think about anything that happens, anything you see, the beauty of our mountains and our lake or anything else. After that, we give thanks to you, O Lord. And just really a brief thing. I was preparing all these slides this morning early, and CBS Sunday Morning came on, and a couple of things caught my attention. One was tracking the path of Asian giant murder hornets. Remember the movie Killer Bees? Well, this is the killer bees. And then they were talking about the current situation versus going back to 1968 and the riots and the things that were happening then. There's an article in the RJ today about 1990 and the marches that occurred here in Las Vegas in 1990 over the death of a black man with a police chokehold. Anyway, continuing to talk about fear with the media. Okay, we'll close with a prayer, and then I've got some closing hymns, or a closing hymn in different versions. God of lilies and sparrows and the grass of the field, we hear your call to spend no worry on things that we call necessity. We want to trust in you. We release our cares to you. We walk into the future knowing we are in your hands, and in all things we give you thanks. Amen. So I'll take a show of hands for those who I can see, or if you want to unmute, you got two versions I'll play. Either I'll play the traditional hymn or I'll play the Elvis version of Precious Lord, Take My Hand. How many for the Elvis version? Anybody else? How many for the traditional hymn version? 1, Susan's 2, 3. Okay, we'll do both. How's that? We'll start with a traditional hymn. Thanks, everyone. We'll see you next week, and stay on to hear these two musics. They won't be on the video, on the, at least the Elvis version, I know will get thrown off of YouTube when I use it. But you can get any of these on YouTube, and just do a search for Precious Lord, Take My Hand. Thanks again.
Thank you, Scott.
I will get this started.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Somebody will shuffle.